Alright, put yourself in my shoes. I've just turned 8 years old. I'm the top-rated kid in the country for my age. This is my first chance to win a national championship. I'm cocky, sure of myself, puffed up with the confidence that no kid can beat me. I've cruised through the first 6 rounds of this tournament, now I'm on the first board in the last round. My opponent's name is David Arnett. He goes to the Dalton School in New York City. He looks scared. What I don't know is that Dave is considered by everyone who knows him to be a genius. At 3 years old, he'd memorized the New York City subway map. At 5, he was doing high school math. And at 6, he'd been the top-rated first grader in the country. As far as I was concerned, he didn't have a chance. I had the white pieces in this game. I played e4, opening by taking the center. e5, knight f3, I'm attacking his e-pawn, knight c6, bishop c4. So far, this is all very standard. But here Dave surprised me. He played knight d4. What do you think of this move? When this kind of thing happens in a chess game, your alarm bells should go off. We were in the last round of the national championships on the first board. Obviously, he's a good player. And this move appears to hang a pawn on e5. I can just play knight takes e5. So the first question is, why not? If your opponent makes apparently a big mistake like this, you have to look for the trap. If knight takes e5, does he have an idea? So that's the first question I want to ask you. What should white do here? Let me give you 3 options to choose from. You can take the pawn on e5, grabbing what he's just hung. You can play knight takes d4, or you can simply castle. Castling is a normal move, completing your development. Your king is safe, no problem. This would be a very good decision. Knight takes d4 is a fine move. I'm taking the knight, he plays e takes d4. I've doubled his pawns, which is often a weakness, and now I can just castle. I've completed my development, I've got a bishop out, I've got a slightly better pawn structure, everything is fine. Knight takes e5 is what I played in the tournament. A terrible decision. I fell for his trap. You see what Dave had in mind? Look for a fork. Dave played the very powerful queen g5. And now, from the very beginning, I'm in trouble. You see what he has in mind? This opening is actually called the Costage trap, and I fell right into it. Playing knight takes e5, I allowed queen g5. Think about the psychology of this moment in the game. I'm 8 years old, in the last round of the national championship, and immediately I know I've fallen into a trap. My heart's pounding, I've started to sweat. My opponent looks happy, he's smiling. He's got me. What should I do? A theme we're going to be working on throughout this course is mental resilience. This is the kind of situation you'll find yourself in often as a chess player. We all make mistakes, and usually what decides the outcome of the game is how we handle the position right after the mistake. Here he's threatening my knight and my pawn. The problem is that if I just move my knight somewhere, say d3 or f3, after he takes my pawn, he's threatening my rook on h1, which would come with check, and now in this position my knight is also hanging. If I move my rook, he takes on f3 with his knight, check, and this is terrible for me. And if he takes my knight on d4, then after queen takes h1, I've lost a rook, the king moves, say, to e2, and then he can take on e4 check, everything is falling apart. That's the problem. Okay, put yourself in my shoes. You've just fallen for a trap. You know it. Queen g5 has been played. My opponent has got me just where he wanted to get me. Now I have to recover. What should I do? Let me give you 3 options to choose from. Bishop takes f7 check, castles, or knight g4. Bishop takes f7 check, I believe would have been the best move. He moves his king. Now usually this kind of thing would be great for me. I've taken a pawn, made his king move in the middle so his king is stuck on e7. But in fact here I have a lot of problems. My knight on e5 is hanging, and if my knight moves, my bishop on f7 is hanging. But more important than that even, is that my pawn on g2 is hanging. Now my rook is hanging. I have to defend it by playing rook f1, say. Now, what should black play? Excellent. And it's all over. My king is trapped, can't move to f1 because the rook is there. The only move I can play is queen e2 to block the check. And now what should black do? Now, what should black play? Very good. Queen takes e2, checkmate. Excellent. And it's all over. That would be terrible. What I tried to do was hang on to everything. I saw that if I played a move like knight takes f7, he would play queen takes g2, and I'd be in huge trouble. I'd have no time to take his rook on h8 because my rook on h1 was hanging. And if I move it, say to here, then after queen takes e4 check, I lose my queen. So in this position, I would have had to play queen e2, blocking with the queen to give the white king the breathing space of the d1 square. But then after black takes, knight takes e2, bishop takes e2, king takes f7. This is horrible. I'm completely losing. I'm down a queen. So I saw I couldn't do that. If he blocks that with bishop e2, do you see black's best move here? Excellent. That's called a smothered mate. The bishop on e2 can't move because it's pinned by the black queen to the white king. The king can't move anywhere. Knight f3 is checkmate. It's all over. One thing that happens psychologically in this kind of situation is that I've made a mistake. My opponent's taken advantage of that mistake. But I don't really accept it. I don't really agree. Okay, I've made a mistake here. And so I try to keep everything up in the air. I try to hold on to everything I've got. In this situation, he's attacking my knight on e5 and my pawn on g2. We've already seen that if I play bishop takes f7, I can regroup. I can, after king e7 castle, give up a little material, take the center, and I'll be fine. But instead of doing that, I tried to keep it all together. I played knight g4, defending my knight by moving it away and blocking the attack on the g2 square. This might seem like the best move, but in fact what it does is give black time to develop a fierce attack. Here, what should black play? Very good. Here he had a discovered attack. Dave played d5, a very strong move. And now I'm really on the ropes. You see what his idea is? He's attacking my bishop on c4, and he's opened up a discovered attack from his bishop on c8 onto my knight on g4. Now things are really starting to look scary. In my course that I call The Psychology of Competition, here I fell completely into it as an 8-year-old boy. White's a move. What should I do? Would you play bishop takes d5 or bishop e2? Yes, bishop e2 would have been the right choice. I'm getting my bishop out of the way. I'm not trying to save material, I'm just trying to survive here. Of course, he can win a piece. He plays knight takes e2, removing a defender of the g4 square, queen takes e2, and bishop takes g4. Here I can block with f3. And okay, I'm down material, I've lost a piece, but I'm alive. My king's okay. I can castle soon, get my king to h1, open up the center. I can start to fight back. This would have been okay. Not good, but okay. But that's where comebacks begin. Let me give you 3 options. One is queen h4 check. One is just to bring your bishop back to d7 because it's threatened. And one would be the aggressive move, bishop takes f3. Which do you prefer? This is the kind of moment that all of your alarm bells should be going off as a chess player, if you have the black pieces here. Here, my king is stuck on e1. His queen, bishop, and knight are coordinating against me. I've wasted a lot of time. Here he can play bishop takes f3, g takes f3. And now, do you see his next move? Well done. Queen g2 attacks my rook on h1 and my pawn on f3. Knight takes f3, notice, is a deadly attack because my king can't move anywhere, and I have to take on f3 and give up my queen. After rook f1, If you find the next move with black, you've seen the forced win, and Dave could have won the national championship this way. Black to move. What do you do? Very good. Best move would have been bishop e7. Very strong attacking move. Sometimes these slow moves in the middle of the attack, sometimes we always look for checks and checks and checks and captures. But sometimes what it takes in this kind of position is a thoughtful, present, quiet decision, bringing one more piece into the attack, and the idea, of course, now is bishop to h4 is going to be a mating attack. After bishop e7, there's no way for me to guard the h4 square. My king is stuck. There's no way for me to make room for my king to run away anywhere. Bishop h4 is going to come next and win the game. I'm dead lost. David could have played this. You see how quickly a game can fall apart with 2 or 3 mistakes? But look, Dave gave me another chance. He didn't realize how much danger I was in. He didn't have the presence of mind himself to seize the moment. He played bishop d7. Now I have a new lease on life. A little bit. I have 2 pawns for a piece, so I'm down some material. He's threatening on g2. The most important thing in this kind of situation is the quality of your presence of mind. If I had just been looking at this position as a chess game, I would have said, okay, I can castle here, no problem. Get out of the way. If he plays bishop c5, I can just play king h1. I defend. No problem. If he plays bishop h3, threatening mate here, I can play rook f2. And next move will be king h1. Here, I've defended my king, and I'm okay, I can play chess. This would have been a simple decision. So you see, white could just play castles, get the king to safety. But again, you think about my psychological state. I was an 8-year-old boy, everything was falling apart for me. I played rook g1. For some reason, I couldn't gain my clarity of mind back. This is something that you'll see over and over in yourself and in your opponents. And I'm showing this game largely because I want you to realize the importance of your psychological state when you play chess. If you have a present mind, you can find the best move. If you get caught up in a downward spiral, everything can fall apart. After rook g1, I've set up a whole new set of attacks for Dave. What should he play? Look for a fork, and look for what I've left behind. Dave played queen h4 check. His idea, of course, is that my king on e1 is in trouble, and if I play g3, blocking, then he can take on h2. My rook just left that behind. This is the principle I want you to also be aware of in chess. Look for the space left behind. I played rook g1, exposing the h2 pawn. He can take advantage of it with queen h4 check. Whenever your opponent makes a move, think, what have they left behind? Sometimes they have a threat, sometimes they've given you a potential threat. After queen h4 check, I didn't want to play g3 because after queen takes h2, it's just terrible. So I played king f1. And now Dave took the pawn on h2. Queen takes h2. What should white play here? Once again, we reach a moment where I have to have presence of mind. I have to regroup. I have to not try to take material. I have to recognize the only factor in this position, which is important, is my king's safety. And you'll learn principles as you study chess. In the opening, you want to develop, you want to control the center. You want to bring out a piece, moving one piece, one time usually, in the opening. Then you want to get your king to safety. If something is a little bit off from a principled perspective, here, for example, my king has been stuck in the middle of the board, what I should think about is my king safety. I should play a move like d3, next move bishop e3, cover up my king, defend, try to survive. That's what I should do. But again, I was caught up in the downward spiral, and I hadn't completely admitted that I was in big trouble. What I played was bishop takes b7. I was trying to get another pawn. My idea is, okay, I have to try to take some material to begin the fight. Before I could begin the fight, I had to consolidate my king's position, d3 and bishop e3. Instead, after bishop takes b7, I let black continue with his attack. He played rook b8, attacking my bishop. I went back to d5. What do you think black should play here? Would you play knight f6 or bishop c5? Both moves bring a new piece into the attack. Which do you prefer? Knight f6 would have been an okay move. He's bringing the knight out, he's eyeing the bishop here. Maybe the idea of knight h5 to g3, which is very strong. But bishop c5 has more immediate threats. He's eyeing the rook on g1, which is very hard for me to defend because his queen and bishop are lined up. When his knight moves with a discovered attack, we call this a discovery. When the knight moves out of the way, it'll expose the bishop's attack on the g1 square. So then black could play queen takes g1 check, which will be terrible for me. So in this kind of situation, anywhere the knight moves will open up this deadly attack. So it's like the knight has a free move. It can move to f3, knight takes f3. He could take on c2, attacking my rook on a1. He could play knight b3, attacking my rook on a1 again opening up the queen and bishop on the g1 square. Bishop c5, preparing a discovered attack, which is a very important attacking weapon for you to learn. The discovery is a very important weapon for you to master. Bishop c5, bishop and queen eyeing g1, a great attacking move. At this point, things were really terrible, and I just tried a last-ditch attempt, b4. My idea, to be honest, was trying to distract his bishop off of the g1 square, because things are really falling apart. If he played bishop takes b4, I would have succeeded. But he didn't, of course. Dave took with the rook. And after the fork c3, Dave just came back, knight c6. Opening up the bishop and the queen on g1. Of course, Dave could have played more actively. He could have played things like knight b3 or knight c2. Discovery is with more attack. He could have even taken on f3. But okay, he played knight c6. Now, once again, if I play d4, which would have been the best try probably, he can maintain his attack on the g1 square by sacrificing. What would you play for black here? This is the kind of moment in an attack where you just keep on going. My position is teetering right on the edge. He can play knight takes d4, and after c takes d4, bishop takes d4. Both my rooks are attacked. His next move is going to be queen takes g1. If I give up my queen, then I've lost a queen. If I don't give up my queen, I'm going to get my rook taken, then he'll take on g2, then he'll bring his bishop into the game, my king's stuck in the middle. I'm going to get mated right away. Here, once again, I seem to deny the fact that I was in big trouble. I played c takes b4, he played queen takes g1 check, king e2, knight takes b4. This was a big mistake by Dave, actually, because he allowed me to trade queens, which brings up another important principle. If your opponent has a tremendous attack against you, if your king is stuck in the middle of the board, what you want to do is trade queens. So if the queens come off the board, I can start to consolidate. Now, another conflicting principle is that when you're way up in material, you usually want to trade down. This is something we'll go into later on in the course. So here Dave has to decide which principle is he going to live by. Is he going to maintain his initiative by continuing the attack, or is he going to allow a trade knowing the endgames will be good? In this situation, Dave should have continued the attack. He could have just played knight d4 check, removing the defender of my queen on d1, and it's all over. But for some reason he played knight takes b4, and here, of course, I should have played queen takes g1, but at this point my mental state was completely wrecked, and I played d3. And Dave had mate in 1, queen f2 checkmate. Think about how many bad moves were made in this game. And Dave and I were the two top 8-year-olds in the country. So when you think about chess, it's not about perfection. It's not about not making a mistake. All chess games contain mistakes. Usually the winner is the one who's been most successful in rolling with the punches, dealing with the adversity as it came up, and who's able to recover when things go wrong. Take a look at this next game. This was really an awful loss, but it's a wonderful example of the downward spiral. I showed this game for a number of reasons. One is that it was a tremendously important moment in my life. It sparked a big crisis, and it spurred me into a much healthier relationship to competition. Another reason is that this game in many ways serves as a counterpoint to my entire philosophy of learning and performance. A huge emphasis of this course, my book, and all my instructional material is resilience. In this game I was anything but resilient. In fact, I was about as brittle as you can get.